What's up guys, your girl Luki here, back with another video, and today I will be discussing my thoughts and my review of episode 1 of The Last of Us. So, this is coming from the perspective of someone who never beat The Last of Us video game, so I'm coming into it with a general knowledge of how the plot goes and how the story goes, but nothing in depth. I have a baseline understanding of the characters. I knew about the opening sequence before it came about because I mean, listen, The Last of Us it's been out for years, you know. It's one of the most talked about games of the last 2 generations, 3. You know, especially with the recent remake and then of course the very controversial Last of Us Part 2. So, when I first heard that they were going to do a TV show for The Last of Us, I was like, oh, cool. You know, this isn't the first video game to live action adaptation. Some are better than others, but most of them are kind of sketchy. There's just something about the medium of video games that does not translate well into a television or movie format. But, you know, they're fun in their own ways, as long as you're not really expecting too much. That being said, I feel like The Last of Us was and is the perfect game for this kind of live action adaptation. And honestly speaking, the first episode leads to that. Like, it gives truth to that because it was absolutely fantastic. It was a really, really good first episode. I was very impressed with the acting, with the storytelling. And honestly speaking, I know that there was a bit of back and forth earlier on about, I believe the actress's name is Nico, being cast as Joel's daughter, Sarah. That is, there is this thing. She was race swapped essentially, right? Same with Pedro Pascal. Joel was race swapped by having Pedro be the actor. Honestly, they did a very, very, very good job, and I was really impressed by all of it. So this review is going to contain spoilers. I'm not going to go too in-depth about what happened during the episode, but I will talk about certain things that stood out to me. I did really enjoy the opening sequence, which, to explain it better, would be this article here discussing how in 1968, it was a TV interview between 2 scientists, and one of the scientists explained that his greatest fear is not a global panorama. It is a mind-controlling fungus that could one day thrive on a warming planet, turning humans into fiends. The audience and the talk show hosts, they were a bit flippant when he started talking and discussing his viewpoints, the scientist that is. But as he continued talking, you know, you could see and essentially taste the palpable fear in the air regarding it. So I thought that was a brilliant way to open up the show. It cuts to Joel and his kid, Sarah. What I really enjoyed about this part of the episode is that it gave us a lot of time with Sarah, especially, and we could see her dynamics with Joel. And honestly speaking, they have a fantastic relationship. You could see how much they love and care for one another. And honestly speaking, even though I knew what was going to happen, anticipation doesn't make it hurt any less. And I will get into that scene in a moment, right? But I did like the little bits of environmental storytelling. I enjoyed seeing certain things like the dream catcher on the wall, the picture of Joel that was cut to of him in his uniform, his army uniform, that is. Their sticker on Tommy's truck talking about veterans, combat veteran, implying that Tommy was also in the military. You know, and again, you spend a lot of time with Sarah. Something I really enjoyed was when she was in the shop getting Joel's watch fixed for his birthday. There was her looking at this stand, essentially, or I'm not sure what it was exactly, but it was like weaving and twisting in a way that it looked like fungal, just fungal growths, you know what I'm saying? Like fungus growing and twisting. And I thought that was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like that's a nice little, hey, this is like a little bit of foreshadowing of what you're going to see sometime soon in the future. You're going to see this fungal growth just going upwards, you know. And if I could backtrack a bit, touching on the opening sequence, it was a lot of, it reminded me a lot of a DNA sequence and how DNA is mapped out, but at the same time, the way it was bobbing and weaving like the fungal growths. So, and then it grew into a silhouette of Joel and Ellie. Very, very nice bit of storytelling in that regard as well. So, it, you know, it was a watch rack. All right, so Sarah, she goes to visit the neighbors, and then, well, she's in class first, and as she's in class, you can tell that the fungus has already reached where she's at, because one of the students, his hand was twitching, and that's an indication of the fact that he's already been infected. There's a kid in her class coughing. Nice, just clear, like really quick cutaways, right? You blink and you miss it, sort of thing. Sarah, she goes over to the neighbor's house, and the older woman, Mrs. Adler, she is very, very, very old, essentially, right? Can't do too much on her own, can't eat on her own, that kind of thing. The implication there is, you know, Sarah would be spending time with her and helping to take care of her, along with the caretaker who would come over as well, right? And also like a little bit of maybe she acts as a babysitter, since Joel and Tommy work long hours and he can't be at home all the time because he's attempting to make extra money to take care of both of them, right? Okay, so Sarah stands up, you know, she goes to look at the display that has a bunch of different movies there, that Sarah's going to take one of them so she and Joel can watch it later on in celebration of his birthday. And as that's happening, Mrs. Adler is in the back twitching. She's just like, just twitching, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's clear that she's in the later stages of the, what is it called? Infection? I don't know what it's called in these games. But I guess infected. She's in the later stages of the infection, and you know, she's not long for this world, let me tell you. One of the things I really enjoy about certain stories, especially when they feature animals, is the way that animals can tell right away, like, hey, something's not right, because Mrs. Adler's dog was staring at her like, no ma'am, there's something weird going on with this chick, right? So, Sarah ends up leaving, and then she heads back home. And then, you know, Joel shows up. He hands her, she hands him the watch. So like, oh, okay, I got the money from upstairs to fix your watch because I knew you weren't going to do it. And, you know, a lot of emphasis is placed on her giving him this watch. It's basically what was happening throughout the entirety of the first part of the show, right? And it was a really sweet moment. Again, they have fantastic chemistry. It really made me feel for what was about to happen next. So Tommy calls Joel. Joel picks up. He's like, "What's good?" Tommy's like, "I need you to bail me out." And Joel's like, "Oh my God," right? So he goes to do that while, and he places Sarah in bed so she's, you know, she doesn't get a little crink in her neck while he's gone. And she ends up waking up at 2 a.m. because of all the explosions going around. She walks downstairs, sees that Joel is not back, and then the dog from next door is like, let me in! Let me in. The dog is like banging on the window like, no, you need to let me in right now. And so she lets him in. The dog's like freaking out, clearly. Like something's wrong, right? Obviously something is wrong. Sarah turns. She's like, okay, I'm going to go check on the neighbors. He's all like, girl, don't go out there. Like, girl, do not go out there. What are you doing? And she tries to take him back. He escapes. He's like, nope, it's not going to be me. It is not about to be me. He pieces out, as he should. Like, I don't even blame him for 1 second. I wouldn't have. But yeah, so Sarah walks into the neighbor's house and she sees something very horrific, which is Mrs. Adler feeding on the caretaker while, I'm assuming, her son maybe is bleeding out next to them. They've both been infected, right? there are these tendrils coming out of Mrs. Adler's mouth, and it's pretty, listen man, it's pretty nasty, okay? It's pretty nasty, it's pretty freaky. It reminds me very much of The Strain, which is a vampire show that aired for a bit of time, and they had something similar. They were like worms, but they would just come out. It was nasty, all right? But it reminded me of that, and I was just like, that's pretty disgusting. But that's how Mrs. Adler, I hope I am saying her name right, I don't know. But the old chick, she was, that's how she was spreading the infection and eating everybody, right? So, Sarah runs out because Mrs. Adler starts chasing after her. Joel and Tommy pull up in the truck. Joel's like, get in the car, and Sarah's like, I'm being chased right now. Joel does what he has to do, you know what I'm saying? He bashes her, Mrs. Adler, that is, across the face with a wrench because she's running at them full speed. Well, as full speed as she can get, right? Considering the host's body is very frail and, you know, much older, right? But, you know, it then cuts to a sequence which is Joel, Tommy, and Sarah driving, trying to get out, like trying to escape from what's happening. Everywhere around them is in chaos. You know, and it cuts to this really interesting conversation, a very interesting key conversation perhaps, in which Sarah and Joel and Tommy are sitting in the truck, and they're having a discussion about the spread, essentially. Like, Mrs. Adler had spent a lot of time in the city due to her aging status to receive care, right? And Sarah had just recently been in the city to get Joel's watch fixed, right? And so Tommy and Joel are talking about how it originated from the city, and that's, you know, that's where it was first seen. That's where the most spread is happening. And Sarah has this concerned look in her face where she's like, but, you know, it takes a lot of exposure, right? Right. A lot of, you have to go to the city a lot of times before you're actually infected, right? Like, just the implication there that, you know, maybe she might have been infected while she went to go get Joel's watch fixed. So I like that little aspect of that as well, right? So as they're trying to escape, plane crashes, knocks the car upside down. Sarah twists her ankle. Joel has to pull her out, run off to meet Tommy by the riverbank because they are cut off because the cars are on fire, right? As he's doing so, a military dude comes through. You know, he's all like, where are you going? And when it comes to situations like this, you know, it really is like a shoot first, don't consider long-term consequences, I guess you can say, kind of thing. But the military dude, he goes to shoot Sarah because, you know, Joel's like, no, she's hurt. I guess there's no there's no long-form explanation there. He's like, yeah, she hurt her ankle. He didn't get into how she hurt her ankle, like, in a car crash or whatever. She wasn't infected. She wasn't, seemingly wasn't infected, wasn't bit. Military dude gets his orders. He's like, oh, I gotta shoot both of you. Shoots them. Joel it grazes him essentially, but because Joel was holding Sarah in his arms, she ended up taking the brunt of the shot. Something I really I didn't enjoy that, but something I really liked was this, when he picked Sarah up and he held her close, right? He said, keep your eyes on me, don't look anywhere else. I feel like, okay, again, I didn't play the game, so I'm not 100% on this, but I feel like that's something he might end up saying to Ellie near the end of the show. You know, if it comes back around, I think that would be fantastic, right? But after that opening sequence, I'm gonna be honest with y'all. Again, I saw the discourse, the discourse with the, you know, was Joel right in what he did at the end of The Last of Us? I guess spoilers for the game as well. So if you don't want to be spoiled in that regard, but you know what? I'm not gonna go too much in detail. I'm just gonna say that I'm on Joel's side. Okay, Team Joel. He did what he had to do. Because him and Sarah and the pain, it was visceral. You could really feel it. You could really see how it, I mean, obviously he lost his daughter in a very violent manner, and you could see how it affects him still to this day. because then we get a time skip 20 years in the future. Joel was 36 when Sarah died, making him 56 now. He is battle hardened. He was already battle hardened before because he was in the military, but even more so having to survive and live in this world, especially without his daughter, and now attempting to keep his brother alive because his brother is all he really has left. And it's very good. It's very good. And you know, I wanted to talk about that opening sequence the most in detail, because it was fantastic, and it was a very powerful opening. And it was, in my opinion, I've seen the opening sequence for the games and it plays out the same way, but them giving us more time with Sarah just has it hit much harder. And I thought they did a really good job with it, right? So the first indication that the time that Joel is spent attempting to survive and Joel is battle hardened is that he is living in a military occupied zone. His job, there are different odd jobs that he picks up, right? But part of his job is to dispose of infected bodies. There's a child who comes up to the base. He's strapped in, you know, he's been infected. Military chick Slaw, like, she lies to him. I mean, she gives him comfort in the best way that she can, because they have a way to test whether or not you've been infected, and it's by, I guess, reading your temperature, right? That's the assumption. I'm actually not 100% sure about that. I'm making that assumption there, right? But they end up injecting the kid with something, some kind of poison. Kid dies. Joel, again, he's been in survival mode. Kid's already dead. Picks up the kid's dead body, throws it in the fire. Doesn't even think about it, tosses it in. It's like, it's a body, you know what I'm saying? So that was really good, right? Military, again, it is military occupation, dictatorship, really. They're hanging folks for breaking the rules, like really extra stuff, like, you know. I understand the severity. I still think stuff like that's super dumb, but I understand what's going on, right? There's this group of rebels called the Fireflies. They have their insignia everywhere. Well, not everywhere, but in certain places that people have to cover up. Something I would like to point out that I really liked was this saying where it was like, when you're lost in the dark, look for the light. And that was on the wall that Joel walked under, because he makes extra money by selling drugs to military personnel, right? And I mean, he's a drug dealer. Again, you do what you got to do in order to survive and make the money that you need to survive, right? They introduce us to Tess. Tess is a bad bee. She's really, I like her. You can tell. Again, she is someone who has been through a lot. She is someone who is able to keep her composure very well, because when you're introduced to her, she's got a swollen eye. She's been beat up because someone had double-crossed her in a deal, essentially, and she found out about it. But she's a tough girl. We get an introduction to Ellie. After that, we get an introduction to Marlene. You know, some of the key players from the game, from what I am aware of and everything, right? So yeah, and then the episode continues on with that, and I think it's very reminiscent to the games, at least, like this concept of trying to smuggle Ellie out of the city and everything. I think I remember seeing that from the game and everything. So ultimately, the episode ends with them, Tess and Joel, finding out that Ellie has been infected, or is infected, is a walking, what is the word? I don't know. Petri dish of infection. I don't know, but it's really good, and I very much enjoyed it. But again, if I could circle back to the saying where it was like, when you're lost in the dark, look towards the light. I really like that, as they were keeping Ellie, I mean, yeah, they were keeping her hostage, essentially, just waiting for a couple of days to pass to see if she succumbs to her the bite, because she had been bitten, right? It said on the wall that she was sitting in front of, because she was chained to the floor, right? It said on the wall that she was sitting in front of, that is, it said, when you're lost in the dark, and it just, it tapers off from that. But since we had seen that saying earlier, where it was like, when you're lost in the dark, look towards the light, since we had seen that saying earlier, we know what the end of the phrase is. And then there's Ellie sitting there, and she's bathed in light. There's light coming from the window, highlighting her form, which I think again another way, a piece of environmental storytelling there. Like, she will be Joel's light in the sense, you know what I'm saying? She will be what brings Joel back in touch with that side of his emotions, you know what I'm saying? So ultimately, very good first episode. I really enjoyed it. I think they did a fantastic job. I was very impressed by everything that they were able to accomplish in this first episode. And honestly speaking, I think this might be the best video game adaptation of a series to live action. Even though I like the Assassin's Creed movie and I like Prince of Persia. They're not very comic accurate. That's just a saying. They're not very game accurate, you know what I'm saying? Lore accurate, it's not. The Halo television show by Paramount, I'm not really into Halo like that. Like, I enjoy the Halo Infinite multiplayer, but apparently according to a lot of my buddies, they don't follow the Halo lore at all for the television show. And I just feel like The Last of Us can be a masterclass in showing that you can just follow the story lore, man. Just follow the plot points properly. You don't have to do all this extra stuff. I feel like a lot of it is arrogance on whoever is adapting the source material into a show or a movie. Like, it's arrogance on their part. They're like, I have to have a say and I'm gonna have my mark on this, I'm not gonna follow the source material and that kind of thing. I think it's really silly when they do things like that and it ends up not working out. Typically it ends up not working out. There are different instances where it ends up being perfectly fine and people do enjoy it quite a bit, right? But I think, like, in the grand scheme of things, in a lot of cases it doesn't work out. But again, this is in my opinion, the best adaptation of a video game to live action. I mean, if you guys have any ideas or thoughts on what was better, what had been better, what had been better adapted, I'd love to know. But that's it for me. I guess, let's see here, maybe a 9 out of 10 for me for the first episode. I would say it fell off a little bit near the end. Like, that opening sequence was so powerful that it just kind of, it didn't make the rest of it dull or anything like that. I just felt like it was just so powerful that it stuck to me in that regard. And the other half was like, okay, yeah, world building, I definitely get it. Character building, I definitely get it. So ultimately, great time. I had a great time as a casual, as someone who has not beat the Last of Us games. Really great time, and I definitely think you guys should give it a shot and check it out. So that's it for me, guys. I will catch you for another one. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Peace.